my fist can move from point A to point B. Now, how much power would be stored up here relative to the distance that this would travel if I turned as well? Welcome back to the channel, guys. Kerry Gray here today on the range at Bletchingley Golf Club, standing next to Ollie Tucker. Ollie, thanks for coming along, my man.
No problem, pleasure.
And we're going to be running through some great exercises and drills to improve the quality of your backswing. The golf swing, it tends to have a domino effect from how you set up to the backswing to the impact, and we're going to be focusing on some key elements here that could really upgrade the quality of your ball striking. Let's get in. So this one's quite a unique example for one main reason, in the fact that a lot of the players, they get quite one-dimensional when they analyze their swing at home, right? So there's going to be a lot of guys here who may not get in-person or online coaching, and they scour the internet to try and find the next gold nugget of information. And very often we hear the term inside takeaway, right? And a lot of players will identify that by the club head moving around.
Yep.
But this player that we've got here, and this is a recent online lesson, a recent lesson that you had, right? He was tending to do that pattern, and then this was his modification of it. So what happens is, if we were just as a reference line, for example, we're going to draw this up the club shaft plane, and as he was swinging this golf club back, what we'll notice is through this position, his hands have actually lifted a fair bit above that line, okay? Now, if we do the same thing over here on the right-hand side with the model, what we'll notice is as he tracks it back, the hands stay on the line. Now, both of these images within reason, you can see the club head and the hands, they form one straight line.
Yep.
Okay, pretty similar camera angles, actually pretty well spot on. This guy, you must have filmed this. And we can see that the head and the hands are relatively in line, and that's a checkpoint you often hear.
Definitely, yeah.
But talk to us about why this guy on the left, right? First of all, how he got to this position after deciphering himself that he had an inside takeaway, and he came to you and goes, I fixed my inside takeaway. Look, it's perfect.
Yep.
And you said, well, it's not necessarily just looking at the visual, and that's where we get a lot of players, they start to just position the golf club through the swing rather than swing through positions. And you worked with this gentleman on an amazing exercise that we're going to talk about in a second, because it's more about the sequence of how these events occur rather than the actual aesthetic of it, yeah?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so talk us through it here.
So yeah, and you're along the right lines exactly. He's been a serial, let's say, offender for having the club roll in behind him, with hands going in front, club head more open than that, and certainly, yeah, much more behind him than it is. And the checkpoint you use there, which is exactly that, club head in line with the hands when the shaft's about parallel. Even his club face, he quite likes taking it back. So the big difference here is, with the model on the right-hand side, where the hands are in relation to, let's say, his hip and his body, and how much there is in terms of the difference between his right elbow and his left elbow compared to the right-hand side.
Yeah, huge. And that's one of the big things here. If we have a look at the flex of that trail arm, right, that is considerably more bent than what we see with the professional golfer over here. And you can also see the amount of like body pivot with the professional on the right hand side. He's actually turned his whole torso and his hips more into that position. Okay, so let's talk about extending on from that. Once you made him aware that it wasn't necessarily just the aesthetic that we're looking for, it's how it all fits together. Talk to us about, from there, educating this gentleman on understanding how the sequence of the takeaway produces that effect rather than just trying to position the club there.
Yeah, and exactly that. It was that position where very, very static lower body, and it was get the club in line with the hands, keep the head in front, don't roll it behind. But like you can see here, everything was out and away from the body.
Yeah, so if you just set up to that ball there for me, what we'll notice is that as Ollie takes it out, you can see it straight away, those hands move out and it hits it, right? So set up again for me. Now, show us a proficient example of this. And keep going for me. Perfect. So when he gets back to this club shaft parallel position, you can see it matches the baseline there. The head and the hands within reason are matching up. Now, this gentleman was out in this position here with more flex of this trail arm, as an example, right? So then he worked on his swing, and he ended up just lifting it further and further out to try and get it into this position.
With
right?
less turn.
With less turn, right? So that's a gross exaggeration for the visualization of it, but it's educating him that, okay, he needs to pivot his body better in the backswing to get him into a position where that will happen as an effect. And this guy probably watches a little bit too much online instruction, tries to implement it himself, and this is why he's gotten himself into this position, right? He's just been looking at the aesthetic. So talk to us about what happened from there.
Yeah, so from this position, strike was always the biggest problem with a lot of heel strikes from here.
Correct.
Wasn't loads of turn early on, didn't really give much depth. And with the slightly opening club face at the top of the swing, things would get a little bit steep.
Oh yeah.
Cutting across, outside, heel strikes, left to rights, and then when he does middle one, can get the odd straight pull left.
Yeah.
He's got a bit of speed, so when he does do that, it's no 3 off the tee.
And that's the thing, right? It's like the downswing takes 0.25 of a second, and you want to get yourself set up so you have to be, or so you can be, totally subconscious about what's happening in the follow through, right? You're thinking more of outcome based when you're playing, of the objective you want to achieve,
Yep.
rather than going, I need to feel this in the backswing and this in the downswing.
Yep.
That's a dangerous little concoction there, isn't it? So when you're setting up to that golf ball, and I'll grab this box of golf balls. Now, what are we doing here, are we?
So, like you did with the stick over the hands here, we use that a lot as a visual, like a razor blade. You might tell the kids to, don't cut your hands, don't cut your wrists. I quite like the tall striker ball as well because it adds that connection in the backswing. But without using that or without having someone hold a stick there for you, I quite like the feel for one of this.
So what we're going to do is we're going to place this down behind us there. Now, that is a full box of golf balls, which is quite heavy, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you want to add a bit more weight, you can, but this is enough to use and still hit shots while creating the feel we're looking for.
Yeah, okay, so why the heavy object?
So if you don't use the body and you try and just roll, and this is a roll with the arms here and the hands go away, if you just try and roll it away, it's not creating a huge deal of force. I mean, that's spinning the box for a start as well with a slightly heavier object. I probably wouldn't be able to move
That at all,
that
yeah.
a great deal, yeah. So if you put a bit of pressure behind it there and I try and move that away, that's, yeah, you can't feel anything in your foot there at all.
Yeah, very often I'll actually even just get into position, I'll stand on their club head and I'll say try and move it away. And as coaches we can feel what they're trying to use. And a lot of players will actually just start trying to pull the hands, right?
Yeah.
And I'll go, well, if you're going to try and create power and force in any athletic motion in life, if you just use this little lever and this, there's not much force behind it.
Not at all, no.
Right? So even though the fist, for example, if we're going to do a little punch here, my fist can move from point A to point B. Now, how much power would be stored up here relative to the distance that this would travel if I turned as well? So in relation to the pivot of my body, right, this here traveled a lot further in Exhibit A.
Yep.
Or in Example A, I should say. Now from here, as I pivot my body, the fist has still traveled the same distance, but when I've actually allowed my body to turn, now I'm storing up more energy to then produce a more powerful outcome.
Yeah,
Right.
I'd probably take you hitting me with the first example there.
Should we try it out? From here, I'll put a little bit of resistance here just for the purpose of this so you can feel it. Now, what are we looking for when we do this little example here?
So again, a lot more connection with the arms and the body, so maintaining almost the same gap initially as you start the backswing here, so hands and hips just working a bit more together rather than away too much. And if I get that right.
Was there a cue or a feel in the body that you were giving him here?
Yeah, just maintaining that connection, so rather than hands out this way, butt of the clubs out the target, no hip turn, it's as you rotate in, allow the hip to come and rotate, butt of the club, sort of maintaining points at the belt buckle just for a little bit longer in the first part of the swing.
Yeah, absolutely. So give me an example using the box as well. So a little.
Again, so with the weighty object behind the ball, rolling it doesn't really give you much force to get the box out of the way, but if I get the body turning a little bit and I keep the hands inside, I can push that back quite easily. If I keep extending that, now I've got the club head slightly outside my hands, which is fine. For him, the face being a bit more closed wasn't disastrous, because he's trying to lose the sort of left to right one as well. But the hands being a little bit more over the right foot at this point, rather than out in front, was the biggest new checkpoint for him.
Yeah, great. Okay, so jump over here for me. And what I'll do is I'll come in and I'll give this a feel, right? So this is an excellent drill for me to use when I was a kid, actually, because I was quite handsy off the golf ball, didn't really have much pivot. And I remember the golf coach back in the day used to just stand on the club head, right? And he would go move that away. Now, that's also a great way of creating more power because you've got to feel like you use more of your body, shifting your pressure. However, for the purpose of this, it's really just removing this excess movement where the hands were going out, the end of the club was pointing out to the right of the target, the club head was going in. Now, it doesn't matter if you're doing this over here or over here. At the end of the day, it's just about improving the sequence of the body. So a great drill using something heavy behind it, as you just described so well, as I go back, I'm just almost trying to feel like this whole club shaft, this structure with the end of the grip and my belt buckle stays in an alignment. As for me, I feel like my upper and lower body turns away.
Yep.
Now, when I do this, I'm conscious about, are my wrists and my hands trying to be overactive? And you want to try and feel like it's a big, long, slow movement. Now, I'm not trying to push the box away.
Correct.
Right? I'm using my body and my pivot to allow the golf club to swing in this position, and we can see, well, pretty much gets the spot on, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, I like it. It's also mentioned to the player as well, so he doesn't putt like this.
Yeah.
So it's starting the move almost like your putter swing would be, but just allowing the body to help you move the heavy object.
Yeah, fantastic. So how many reps of him did you get him doing with the box of balls before you just got him clipping a couple down there?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of reps he needs to put in to do that, because that's quite a move that he had taught himself. He thought it was the right way of going about it.
Yeah.
So as many as he did to get from this rolled position to the hands out in front,
A lifetime.
almost the same amount again to feel and see the new movement on the camera.
Yeah, and when we talk about instant gratification in coaching, a lot of players, they'll just do a demonstration of one or two swings. They'll look at it on camera and go, "I got it. What's next, coach?" But there's a big difference between demonstration and ownership. And ownership takes a lot. It's anywhere between, I think the study says, 3,000 to 5,000 conscious, intentional, slow reps before you move the needle at all. That means you wake up the next day, it's a bit better, right?
Exactly.
So the good thing is that's not 3,000 to 5,000 golf balls. That is drills, that is reps, that is making sure that you're doing it just as Ollie was describing so well there.
This is stuff you can do in the office. You're right, you haven't got to hit loads of shots like this. This can be at home. You get a few weird looks from the wife when you're moving objects around the living room. It's pushing the objects away.
Especially the toddler along the way.
Exactly, yeah.
So this gentleman here, there's no perfect set or rep amount. It's more keep doing it, check in with your coach, because he's the one that can determine whether or not you've progressed. And that's the benefit of long-term coaching rather than just going for the quick one-off lesson, right?
Exactly.
Combination of in-person, online is the best way to do it, regular touch points. And just having an understanding that the purpose of this drill is to give the feeling of allowing the body to pivot a little bit better. Now, you were just saying that for this specific lesson, because you've only got a certain amount of time together, you did that for about 10 or 15 minutes until he was able to do it without you really prompting him to do so. And then once from there, then you got him to do the same sort of feeling, right? And as he was rehearsing, he put the box just on the inside, pushed it away, and then swung through, and then you immediately got him to step in and just recreate the feeling without spending too long in between overthinking it.
Yeah, you can even push the box away and still hit a shot. The great thing about this as well. So rather than just moving the box away, restarting, once you've got that backswing to a point where the body's getting involved and the hands are slightly more inside the club head, then we can remove the box and just do that as a sort of pre-shot move.
Yeah. Excellent drill for removing that snatchy, handsy takeaway that we see with so many players. I think one of the most important things to note here is that players don't need to obsess too much about the position of the club head, right? It's more relative that we're looking at, is that getting there as an effect of how the body is moving rather than just doing this.
Correct.
Right? Because a lot of players will go, oh, well, the head and the hands are in line, that's spot on, but you look at my body. And as we see with so many golfers, how they set up and how they move the golf club in the backswing has such a profound effect on their ability to create a consistent quality strike.
Yeah, and as you alluded to there, this is as simple as it sounds to move the club just a few feet, in the backswing and get the body involved. It's not a move that you need lots of lessons for. The great thing with the online and in-person combination is that I can check up on players in between with a quick video and go, yep, keep going, that's great, or you've reverted back, let's pop in and do it another way.
Yeah, absolutely. Great stuff. Nice work.
No worries.